All right, well, good evening, everybody. It's time for us to get started. It's 7 o'clock, so we need to get moving on. Keith is home. He wasn't here Sunday, but Keith's home fighting a kidney stone again. And this one evidently is pretty good size, so keep Keith in your prayers. Ava is home with Prissy, or Melissa, your mother. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Kim's home with a flu bug or something, so yes, ear infection. You're right. Sorry. Sorry. But anyways, we have several that are sick. I sent out a remind so those that you get that saw that this morning. But Tammy Barrett sent me a message this morning, early this morning. Her stepdad, Cloyd. I never had heard that name before. Cloyd Hodge. He passed away. He had a massive heart attack, cardiac arrest this morning. So it's the service is Friday at 1 o'clock at Rieger, but it's a private just for the family. But keep Tammy Barrett and her family in your prayers. That poor lady has gone through a lot lately. So I have Christy.
She's out of ICU in room 3K339.
Okay.
She barely could talk. Sound like her chest was full of fluid.
Yeah.
She is out in the regular room now.
That's good. Okay, so Chrissy Groves is out into a regular room, so we need to remember her as well. That's all I've got on any sick. Anybody else have anything? If not, let's have a word of prayer before we get started. Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for this day and for this opportunity to come and to assemble and to study your word. And we ask that you guide us through this study, that we can learn things, how to better serve you and better apply these to our daily lives. We pray, Father, for these mentioned this evening that are sick, especially for Tammy Barrett and her family with the loss of her stepdad. And we pray that you help her through this difficult time and help us to be there for her in any way that we can. We thank you so much for Jesus, for his blood that was shed on that cross for our sins when we come asking your forgiveness. And so in his name we pray, and amen. We're still we're still in lesson 9. We're several weeks behind of where we should be. I know at the beginning in lesson 1 or 2, Donna had asked a question about whatever we were talking about at the church. Donna had asked a question, are there degrees of punishment and reward? And I said, well, if you don't care if we table that question, I'd come to it at the very end of this quarter. I have done some research into it. I have studied a little bit, but we're getting so far behind. If we don't move on here a little bit, we're going to be the end of January before we start the next quarter. And I don't want to be that far out. So I mentioned it to Luke. He's either going to look at doing a sermon on it, or he probably will incorporate it into the question and answers that he's going to do toward the end of the month. So I told Don I'm not ditching you on this. I just think maybe it might be handled a little bit better to do it that way. Also, January 24th, well, January, the new quarter is, we go right into the book of Acts. I've got the cards and everything up here. My beautiful assistant, Sally, has been started making the copies. We've had a few copier issues, so we've dealt that. So she's working on the copies. So we should have those ready by next Wednesday night. But January 24th and Wednesday night, I am going to need somebody to teach the class for me. I don't know exactly what to tell you just yet, what lesson we're going to be on for another week or two. But I can give you my notes and different things. And if anybody wants to jump in for one class, the quarter after that was started in April, we go into Old Testament geography. I thought I had a teacher lined up. They bailed out on me. But if anyone is interested in jumping on board teaching Old Testament geography, let me know, and we will fix you right up. And then we go into New Testament geography. So if you're interested in either one of those or both, let me know. And at the end of the service or whatever, don't everybody rush me at once, and run me over. All right. Enough of that. Question 8. We're going to talk about the qualifications of elders, and some of this was raised up last week, and I mentioned Doc brought one up, and I think somebody else did too, and I said, well, just kind of hang on to it until we get to this particular section, and we'll go down through here. So if you don't care, turn over to 1 Timothy chapter 3. And we'll read what Timothy has as far as the qualifications. I'm not going to take the time to go over to Titus 1, verses 5 through 9. It's basically the same as 1 Timothy. Some people say, well, they're contradictory. They're not contradictory. They're complementary of one another, these two things. You have to put these two things together in order to come up with the total list, total requirements, total qualifications for an elder. But we'll read through Timothy's, and then if you want to, you can read through Titus as well at some other point. Verse 1 begins, says, this is a faithful saying, if a man desires the position of a bishop, of course we know this is an elder, we looked at this last week, he desires a good work. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior, hospitable, able to teach, not given to wine, not violent, not greedy for money, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not covetous, one who rules his own house well, having his children in mission with all reverence. For if a man does not know how to rule his own house, how will he take care of the church of God? Not a novice, lest being puffed up with pride he fall into the same condemnation as the devil. Moreover, he must have a good testimony among those who are outside, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. And then it goes into deacons, and we'll look at that. Hopefully we get through that part as well this evening. A lot of thoughts, a lot of comments, a lot of disagreements on some of these qualifications for elders. I'm going to hit a few of them first, and then we'll come back to the more difficult ones here in a minute. The one Doc brought up, it says, verse 7 talks about he's supposed to have a good testimony among those who are outside. What's that talking about? Just somebody that's when we're standing outside, or what's that mean? Good overall reputation, okay. Outside of what? Outside of the church, okay. He better have a good reputation inside the church, shouldn't he? But he's got to have one outside the church, okay. Yeah. Did you have a different thought on that, Doc, or? Okay, all right. I didn't know if there was some other spot you were going to go with it, okay. But yeah, you got to be in good standing with the community, okay. You know,
church, if no one wants to hear you, no one wants to be around you.
Yeah. I know when Matt was here, Matt, of course, was working on the house over there a little bit on his own, and then his other house, but he was a lot into Canova Box a lot. And still, when I go in there, there's a lady in there. She said, "Boy," she said, "I sure did like talking to him." And she went to Canova. She said, "If I was ever going to change congregation and go up there," he said, "I'd probably go up there because I really like talking to him or listen to him." So, but she still mentions Matt, and he's been gone for a year, but he had a good reputation in the community, and that's what that's talking about. Of course, some of these are very self-explanatory, not quarrelsome, not violent, not given to wine. We're going to talk about that a little bit more once we get into the deacon, because there is a controversy in there. Hospitable, of good behavior, sober-minded, temperate, able to teach. A lot of thought goes into the comment about able to teach. My father-in-law, for one, was qualified as a deacon, was a deacon for Barbersville. He was at 26th Street as well. But he was qualified for an elder, but he would not be an elder. He would not do that because he didn't feel that he could stand in front of you and be a teacher or teach. And I talked to him a little bit. We didn't talk a lot about it, but I don't think that necessarily means that you've got to stand in front of people and teach. There's other ways to teach. I think an elder needs to be able to do that, or especially at least a Wednesday night, deliver a 5-minute invitation or something. But just because a person doesn't have quite that capability to stand in front of an audience and teach, now that's me. I don't know, a lot of these, I'll tell you right up front, a lot of these are controversial, a lot of these are questionable, and I'm going to ask some questions on a lot of them, and I don't have the answer, so I'll tell you that right up front. So,
an elder is apt to teach the outside world more so than
absolutely.
the church family.
Right.
If someone asks, he should be able to explain to them.
Yeah, and that's a responsibility that all of us as Christians have. I mean, we all should be able to tell somebody the basic plan of salvation. If we can't do anything else more than that, we ought to at least be able to do that. And so, for sure, an elder's got to be able to do that. Yes, ma'am. That goes in part of that responsibility of feeding the flock. Yes, that's part of our responsibility to be able to do that. I think that, and we talked about that last week, but that takes in a lot more than just being apt to teach. Yes. Yep. Yep. As a teacher, and I think that, now this is me, I could be wrong, but to me that's talking about more of this kind of a setting, that kind of a teacher, because we're all supposed to be teachers. Just like we said a minute ago, all of us are supposed to teach somebody, be able to teach others, but somebody that's publicly speaking in a classroom setting or a pulpit or something like that, to me, I think that's what that verse more applies to, that you're going to have a stricter judgment based on what you say. You know.
Someone finds out I'm a teacher, they're going to hold me up to a higher standard than somebody else, and so it's like
they're going to scrutinize what you say a lot more than others.
I don't know exactly who's doing the judging. Okay. Maybe it can go both ways.
Okay, I can.
Also, too, there that teachers want to be handling a lot of words. Yep. And I think in the context there, if you look at it, it's a little more apt to say something out of line.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, you're right.
There's people I can think of that are wonderful teachers, one-on-one, one-on-two or three. There's no way in the world they can get up and do a sermon. They're still a wonderful teacher.
Yeah.
That's where you're teaching. You just have to have that ability.
That's why I said there's a lot of these qualifications that kind of, and so kind of, it's hard to determine exactly, okay? Yeah, good points on all that. One talks about not a novice, okay? I think we understand that. Someone that is a new Christian, a new convert, he's not going to be well versed in the Scriptures. Now, he may know a lot of Scriptures. He may be someone that does know a lot of Scriptures, but he doesn't have a whole lot of experience, does he? So it talks about not a novice. My question is, at what point is he not a novice? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? 3 years? 5 years? 10 years? At what point is he not a novice?
You're asking the same question. When should you be baptized?
Yep. At what age?
Yeah, it's a rhetorical question.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. And I think that is where we come back to what we talked about last week, that the elders are taken from what group? From within. From within the congregation, that they're going to be an elder, right? So if a man has only been a Christian a couple of years, it's going to be up to the congregation to say, okay, he's ready. And maybe not okay, he's not ready. So I think that kind of comes back into that. That elder candidate, so to speak, is pulled from the body. And so the body...
Every bit of this way that's written, it lets the congregation have judgment. Here's the basic outline now. When these people meet these qualifications,
Yep.
It allows for judgment.
Yep. Temperate. Not jumping off the handle all the time. And that, I know of the situation where a congregation didn't have elders for 40 plus years. All of a sudden, they got a new preacher came in. And the new preacher came in and says, "We're going to get elders." He had several sermons about it. Went to talk to several of the men of the congregation. Came back in front of the congregation and said, "Here's 3 men that I think are qualified to be elders. I don't know exactly how they did it. They voted. I don't know if they gave a time frame for comments. I don't know anything about any of that. But all of a sudden, here now they've never had elders, and all of a sudden they got 3 elders." And one of the members calls me up after the fact and says, he said, so-and-so that they just set into elder, he does not have a good reputation outside of the church. he has been known numerous times to fly off the handle and just give people down the road over the least amount of anything. He said, I don't think he's qualified. I said, why didn't you bring us up at the beginning? Why are you even telling me? I don't even go there. I mean, you're 400 miles from me. Temperate, sober-minded, calm, have a good behavior. All that stuff plays into an elder.
Selection of the eldership is the responsibility of the congregation.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely. Now,
People say, well, God put me here, but he's unsatisfied with me and let me out.
yeah.
They ask the congregation, give you an opportunity to say if there's any reason that this one person should not be.
Yeah. That's always been the case here that I'm aware of. Now, a lot of times I'd have to think back at how the process is going on here. But from as far as back as I can remember, I think it was usually the elders that would say, we are putting brother so-and-so in front of the congregation as possibly being an elder, and then offer up a period of time for comments. I don't remember any time that an eldership here came in and said, so-and-so is going to be an elder without offering us a chance to comment on. So anyway, but that it can be handled either way. The elders can suggest a gentleman that they think is qualified and let the congregation say, or the elders should come before the congregation and say, who do you think would be a good elder, and then come with it that way, I guess, as well. Anyway, any other comments about that? Because there's a couple others I want to ask about. Another one that's controversial is children. If a man only has one child, is he qualified for an elder?
Rachel, what is it? Said she had children and she just had one child.
Okay.
The Old Testament, I cannot remember the passage.
Well, Sarah in I wrote it down. Genesis 21 verse 7 talks about nursing children, but at that time she only had Isaac, so she only had one. And I've used this illustration in the past. If we're going to have a meeting, a VBS meeting, and we want all the parents that have children to come up front after service, we're going to talk about VBS and see, how many we think are going to be able to bring their children, blah, 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 blah. Parents come up front, sit down, and I don't know, I'm running the meeting for whatever reason, and I look at, oh, brother so-and-so, what are you doing here? I said, well, you having a meeting, VBS, and children and everything. I said, well, you've only got one child. You can't be here. Is that what that's talking about? No. We got to have a little bit of common sense. Just because a man has one child does not disqualify him from being an elder. Okay?
That's the same thing as saying parents. Not all children have two parents. So does that disqualify them totally if they don't have two parents? And you call for the parents to come forward?
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Okay.
Are we talking spiritual or physical?
Right off the top, I'm just talking about children in we're going to go to that here in just a second, because that takes it another step into controversy. Okay?
Doesn't the Bible refer to like the children, little children, whatever? That means all generations below that.
Yeah. The first point I want to make is, and I have heard, actually I heard it from, they're no longer a member here, but I have heard that comment made from a member of this congregation, such and such is not qualified to be an elder because they have one child. I heard that comment made.
Did you ask them if they have children?
Yeah, have children. Does that mean when you go down the street, just right down the street here, they got a sign up that says children that play slow 25? Well, if there's only one kid out playing in the street, does that mean I can do 70 down through there?
55.
At least 55. Yeah, exactly. No. Anyway, okay, enough about that. Now, it talks about our children having them under subjection, in reverence. And people go so as far as even say that is referring to believing children, Christians. Okay? If a man, in order to qualify as an elder, a man has to have believing children or a child, correct? Does everybody agree with that? Okay. What if, here we go. What if that child falls away? What if? What if he has a child or children, believing children, Christians, they're killed in a car wreck? Is he automatically disqualified?
Those are circumstances beyond your control.
I know. But when you look at all the requirements, especially when you start in verse 2, it says a bishop then must be, and that must be continues with each one of these requirements all the way down. Let's say we know that an elder must be hospitable. Okay? He's been an elder a year or two. For whatever reason, he's no longer hospitable. I do not want Jake in my house under no circumstance, no reason, no nothing. Good move. Gail and Sid would agree. Okay. No. Okay, well, Jake's a bad example. Let's go back to the apt to teach. Okay? He's apt to teach. Something happens. COVID hit a lot of us differently. COVID, a lot of people lost their voice, lost their taste, sense of smell, all that. But let's say you had some kind of disease. You lost your voice. You're not able to speak. You're not able to teach. You're not apt to teach. Are you now not qualified to be an elder?
I've always interpreted this. These are the qualifications to be appointed. Once you're appointed, things change. Your kids grow up and they move out. Well, yeah, they're kind of still your children, but they're not under your subjection. They've got their own family. So, I mean, that can be a problem right there because it talks here about giving it subjection. They're not subjected to you now. They're adults. They're out on their own.
I was always under that same impression, David. I've always been under the same impression. But the more I'm studying this, and I'm not saying that I've got the answers. I told you 10 minutes ago, I don't have the answers, okay? I'm still working through this. Because I'm going to bring up another scenario here in just a second. But from what I can tell, when you look at these words, this must be, and I don't know anything about Greek, but when it goes back to the Greek, it's talking about a present tense, current event, a current situation, a current thing. Okay, let's talk about a husband and one wife. Okay, who does that eliminate automatically? Women. You know, there are people out there that say that does not. Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. But there are just a group out there that say that doesn't exclude women. There is a group out there that says husband and one wife. It says, well, that doesn't even mean that he has to be married with a wife right now. It can be talking about that he has that characteristic of being a husband of one wife, of being a faithful person, of being a good man, a good husband, or whatever. It's like, well, how could you tell that? That's subjection or circumstance. Yeah, but there's a group out there there's a lot of commentaries that you can read, and you'll see that, Gail. There are.
They're like me seeing you drinking a beer and say, well, he has the qualities one day of not being an ignorant wife.
Yeah. But anyway, so I'm wanting to eliminate these things. Okay, so it's not talking about a man that could be married at some point in time in his life, and he probably will be a good husband. It says a husband of one wife, a one wife husband, a one man husband. I can't remember the terminology. I saw it someplace. But one woman husband. That's what I mean. We better not go down that other road. Yeah. Having children negates that. Okay. All right. So, husband of one wife. Okay. What if his wife dies? Yeah. If she. Let's go. No.
So you got to take all of that into group account.
Exactly.
It's not a lifetime job.
Yeah.
You don't guarantee, and I've heard it say, like you're talking about, watch your wife die. And somebody saying, well, if he was born for an elder, now would he qualify? No. because he's not married.
First, Romans 7 says, if a woman's husband dies, she is released from the law constraining her husband, meaning she is no longer married.
Yep.
So I would say if if someone dies, they can't be a husband, one wife anymore. It's kind of hard to get around Romans 7, but.
Well, when they came to Jesus, when the Sadducees came to Jesus and was questioning him about, I wrote it down someplace. I think it's Matthew 26, maybe. I'm not sure. Anyway, when they come to him and they say, okay, we've got this lady, she's on her 7th husband. Okay, she was married. Her husband died. She married his brother, which was the custom back then. He died. She married his other brother. He died, and they went clear through the scenario. And now she's on her 7th husband. And they asked him, he says, well, whose husband, in the resurrection, whose husband will she be? What was Jesus' answer?
You are not knowing the scriptures.
Yeah, that's his first answer. You're erring and you're not knowing the scriptures. But why were they erring? There's no marriage in heaven. Marriage is an earthly bondage. Bondage's not good. Not bondage. Earthly covenant.
The oldest covenant in the Bible is marriage.
Yep.
And I think the writer Paul says that when one of the spouses dies, you're no longer married.
Yeah, and that's just what he quoted out of Romans. Yeah. So, if a man is an elder and his wife dies, but here's the gray area. Should he step down?
I would say yes. I would say
Okay.
yes.
Because there's some that go that way. Some say immediately, yes, he needs to step down. Here's one that disagrees.
Are they the husband of one wife?
Yeah. That's the I know. That's the thing. But the child's died is either dead or unfaithful.
Children have to have in subjection, meaning they have to have experience, because it says if a man doesn't know how to manage his own household,
Yep,
how can he go to church?
I agree. I agree that.
Experience of, you cannot control them out of the house. So once they're out of the house, does that mean you need to step down? Well, certainly not. So it's different with the wife and the child.
See, but not everybody sees that way, Luke. I've had some say that, and they go back to this must be in verse 2. This must be carries a continual thought all the way through each one of these requirements. Because if, just like Doc said, if he's all of a sudden he's not temperate anymore, he's or not hospitable as we talked about a minute ago, or not apt to teach. These other things.
Qualifications is to desire the office.
Well, that's the first one. You got to desire it, absolutely. Yeah.
A man was married, his wife passed away, he doesn't feel that he qualifies, so he resigns because he made that decision.
I'm still up in the air on that one. I'll be right up front with you. I'm still up in the air that if just like Ray, I actually begged Ray to stay on as an elder as long as he did. I was one of them that said, I really don't want you to step down, Ray, after his wife died. Should he have stepped down?
If there, what his conscience is telling him.
Exactly.
If his conscience says, I've got to step down, then you better step down.
Absolutely.
When Donald passed,
Mm-hmm.
Raymond said he stepped down, remember?
Bob McCoy did as well.
But he said, I will be here if you need me.
Yeah.
If there's any member here that needs me, I will be here for you.
Okay, so we beat that dead horse enough. And we don't have a clear-cut answer, I don't think. Some think we do, but I don't think. What if, go ahead, Don.
Thinking that, was it the Grand Church for the members, they were still practicing daily? So they had 2 or 3 wives at the same time. You might have just also clarified to them. You
Yeah.
don't qualify.
Yeah, that wasn't real commonplace, but it did go on back then. And so, yeah, was he actually, and was that why he said that? Is that why Paul told Timothy that, to kind of clear up this thing of having more than one wife, as some had that custom back then? Yeah. What if his wife is guilty of adultery, and he divorces her scripturally and remarries, is he still the husband of one wife or two? Okay. He's still the husband of one wife. Okay. Okay.
I'm not for 20th century activity, okay? So don't take this wrong. But once again, we're looking at first century Christianity.
Okay.
During that time period, the family was a unit that stayed together.
Yep.
It didn't disappear to California or Tokyo, Egypt.
I mean, you're talking about the children moving away, that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, they all stayed right there.
Therefore, they had a better understanding and concept of leadership by looking at the father than we do in today's world.
Yeah, I agree with that. We need to move on because we really need to get out of lesson 9 here if we can. When you get into an elder is not to give into wine. When you get into the qualifications of a deacon, what's it say about a deacon? Not much wine. Does that mean he can have a little bit? He's not. Okay. It talks about not being given to quarrelsome or riotous or whatever. Does that mean you can do it a little bit? Yeah.
How much sin is enough sin?
Exactly. Yeah.
Excuse you, you shouldn't drink at all.
Yeah.
I get that the language there says not much wine, but it's just like a little bit of sin. Is that okay? Or
exactly.
A little bit of this, is that okay?
And that's the reason you got to use with this. And the other thing you got to think about back then is their wine wasn't alcohol content like ours is. When they talk about the wine, it really was just grape juice. Now, it could be fermented, but normally when the Greek talks about it, it's just grape juice. And even when he tells Timothy, I'm getting ahead of the questions because we're getting into the qualifications of the deacons here in a minute, but we're already talking about it. But when Paul tells Timothy to take a little bit of wine for his stomach's sake, Timothy has not been indulging in wine up to this point. Timothy has been not a partaker of it. So for Paul to say that had to be a reasoning for it, and probably was, one, if it was alcoholic wine, it would have been watered down. But it was for a medicinal purpose, and probably even the purpose of the grape juice is to get rid of the bacteria and stuff that would be in his stomach by drinking the unpurified water that they had back then. So even to use that as an excuse for drinking wine, it's not going to go anywhere.
Even today, if you look at cough syrup,
It's got alcohol content in it. Yeah, NyQuil and all that stuff. Yeah.
The Lord condemned drinking too often.
Too many other places he condemns it. Yeah, Old and New Testament. So yeah, to say that a deacon, yeah, it's okay if he has a little sip here or there or whatever. No. Any other thoughts about that? All right, let's talk about number 10. In reality, is it more important to be an elder or a servant? Much more important to be a servant. We all need to be servants. What did Jesus say? Did he come to the world to be served? He came to serve, not to be served. He's the greatest example of a servant that we have.
It's kind of a hard question because the elder is a servant.
Yeah. That's all. That's right. We're a servant. We're really. Very good. Very good. Very well said. And that's all right. We all need to be servants, but not all of us can be an elder. There's a specific role. There's a specific function for each one of us. And that's where that comes into. Number 11, the word deacon. What does the word deacon mean? Minister, servant, helper. You'll see all those interchanged with the word deacon. Okay? I don't think that's pretty well self-explanatory. Number 12, we've already talked about this a lot. Servants of God must be able to what? Have to teach. Not just the elder, but every single one of us. Okay, now it's in this one here. Number 13, I don't mean to be rushing through this, but we really need to get going. Number 13, an evangelist is what? Preacher of the gospel. Evangelist means bringer of good tidings or good news. 2 Timothy 4, 1 and 5, specifically verse 2, talks about preach the word, be ready in season, out of season. Verse 5, do the work of an evangelist, fulfill your ministry. You know, a lot of times in the teaching material kind of jumped on this, and I really hadn't thought about it too much, but a lot of times we refer to the preacher as the minister. The teaching material for this says, no, the preacher is not the minister. We are all ministers, and they go to 1 Peter 2, verse 9 to use that as their reference. We are all ministers. He is the preacher. He is the evangelist. Preacher is not an elder, and he is not regarded to be an elder unless he also is serving as an elder. He is not a pastor. We talked about this last week. Pastor is another name for the elders. Can a preacher be an elder? Yes, if he meets the qualifications that we just talked about. Me personally, I don't think it's a good idea for the preacher to be an elder. I think if he's one of the few that are qualified, then yes, you need to be that. But just last year when Eric Owen was here, he and I were playing golf one day, and he was the elder and the preacher where he was in Georgia. And I asked him jokingly the question. I said, how do you give yourself a raise? And this is before I knew that he was moving to Texas. He looked at me and said, I got a better one than that. He said, how do you fire yourself? Got me there. And it didn't click with me what he was telling me until he leaves a week later and we find out he's moving to Texas. He fired himself. Preacher is not the elder. Preacher is not the pastor.
Who's to supervise the preacher or the evangelist?
It's the elders. It's your responsibility as well. It's your also, because we might not always catch everything. You know, I mean, I sit here and listen to Luke preach just the same as you. You're going to hear something different that maybe I missed. Maybe I was looking at a verse or something when he said something, or maybe it just went over my head. It didn't go over your head. Ultimately, it's the elder's responsibility, but it's each one of us. Yeah.
I would say with the evangelist thing, I wouldn't even say I'm the evangelist. I would say I'm an evangelist.
Yeah.
2 Timothy 2, the things that you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. So it's like my job to train others to be evangelists too.
Yep.
It's just a struggle in a lot of congregations. I don't think here, but
yeah.
It can be some way.
I don't want to open up a can of worms.
Oh boy. We got 4 minutes.
But speaking of elders and ministers, if a congregation has no elder, they are going to establish eldership. Who installs that eldership?
Well,
I have heard so much of this stuff. It's here, there, you know.
yeah. And you know as well as I know, we really don't have an example of really the process of ordaining elders or whatever you want to call it, putting the elders into place. We just know that they were selected from among the congregation, the local body. They were of good report without and within. So the body must have had some input into it, but we don't really have any kind of an example of a formal ceremony.
That more or less the wisdom of consensus. Get everybody
Yeah.
together, everybody comes up with consensus, starting out.
Because I know in the early church, you had Paul and Peter and Paul and Barnabas and Paul and Timothy all going around setting up elders in every congregation. So, there was something involved that they were involved in saying, and at that point, and we've mentioned this numerous times, the church at that point in the first century was very young. So a lot of these men were novices. There wasn't any of them that were old in the faith because the faith hadn't been there very long. But they had the spiritual gifts that were imparted to them. Yes. So that situation, you can't say, well, look at that. That church back in the first century was only maybe 3 years old, so those men wouldn't have known a whole lot. Well, yeah, they did because they had a whole different scenario than what we've got. Anyway.
I've heard some ministers say it's not my job to appoint somebody that's over me.
Yeah.
It's
I think this is me again, and we're out of time, but as me again, and I think you probably feel the same way. If you were in a congregation with no eldership, it's going to be a collective group that's going to say, hey, you know, we think we've got this man and this man and this man. What do you all think? And then as a collective group, preacher included, the preacher does a sermon talking about, you know, the qualification we just did through or whatever, and here's these three names. Anyway, that would be my thinking.
Somebody in the congregation, mostly the men, I'm sure, controls what goes on and makes decisions.
Right.
So this is going to be a decision that with the group's approval.
Yeah.
The congregation doesn't have any elders, just the dynamics of the group. Somebody is going to be the leader. There's going to be a leader word out of every group.
Yeah. And that's not a good thing. That's why we need to have elders. Because he can be the wrong leader, taking down the wrong path. So, yeah, all good thoughts. We didn't make it through. We'll go ahead and talk about these other few here real quick next week and then jump into 10. But, yeah, good thoughts on all of it. Again, like I said, I don't have all the answers.
And I understand the thought, elders are responsible to and for the congregation.
Oh, absolutely.
The congregation is responsible to and for the elders.
Yeah, and that we get into in the next couple of questions. That's why I don't want to skip over these. So, yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth next week. So that's why there's a plurality. Absolutely. There is not one head bishop, one head elder, one head pastor, as we see so much common in today's world. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you very much. We gotta quit.
Smell ringing on the hearing.